right now. Thank you, Rafael. Remember, when I'm sharing full screen, is sometimes I don't see the comments in the chat. I'll try to be more attentive to those. So we are already recording. Yes. Okay. Or are we not? No. Yes, we are recording.
I guess we are. Yes.
Okay. So at some points during the presentation, I will make a pause and give you the opportunity to interact. In the meantime, please keep your microphone closed so we avoid interruptions. I'm sure we're going to have the, you know, the avocado guy and the Mazamorra guy because they pass right in front of my apartment every day. But let's try to keep these interruptions to the minimum. But at some point, I will give you a chance to participate, right? So this talk for today, it's curriculum design for ICT-mediated classes, principles and background. Well, as we all know, this is organized and sponsored by the University English Language Cooperation Network, integrated by the different private and public universities in Cali, and by the Bilingualism Board, Mesa de Bilingüismo, sponsored in turn by Cámara de Comercio. And well, I'm, as I told you already, a professor from Universidad del Valle. So let's get started. This is our agenda for today. We'll start with some basic definitions about curriculum and the modalities for tech-mediated teaching. We're going to take a look at different curricular models and how they relate to the use of technology. And then we're going to concentrate in options for online lessons, okay? How do you structure, how you organize a lesson? As I said before, this is general, this is an overview. Probably some of you will find that what I'm going to tell you today, you're already doing it, okay? Without like the formal knowledge. For some of you, probably some of these concepts will be new. Some of you are already very techie, right? So probably you already know a lot and you will find this information very basic. But well, it is try to approach the broader audience. So let's start with curriculum at a glance. When we talk about the curriculum, generally we come to think of it with these three main characteristics, right? Usually we think of the curriculum as a general document describing the purpose of a teaching program, right? So the curriculum tells us the goals of education, the goals of the program, what is it that we want the students to learn, and what is the profile of the learners, what we want them to be and to be able to do at the end of an educational program, whether it is English, math, social science. That's one of the things that the curriculum gives us. The curriculum also gives us the philosophical view of the program, the values, the principles, the vision, the mission, right? Another key idea when we talk about curriculum is a list of items and abilities students should master as a result of instruction. So this is what we know, the specific objectives. They might be, or they might come by levels, by you know, the grades. For 7th grade, we expect students to learn this and this and this. And of course, apart from the list of general objectives or specific aims, we also have lists of contents, items that students should be able to use in order to achieve those objectives. And finally, the curriculum also provides guidelines on how teachers will teach and students will learn. And that's the methodological aspects. Of course, if you look at the school curriculum, right, the Proyecto Educativo Institucional, you will notice that it has to have all of these, like the philosophical part, the general purpose of education, the identity of the institution, the goals of the levels, and methodological guidelines. And it usually brings what we call the pedagogical model, modelo pedagógico, which tell us what is the view of learning and what is the view of teaching that we have. However, in reality, although these are the three key elements we consider when talking about curriculum, this is a very restrictive view of curriculum. Some authors think that curriculum is actually everything. It goes beyond just the goals and the contents, but it should also include the necessary resources, material resources and human resources for those goals to be achieved. And it has to really be connected or sensitive to the context in which the teaching will take place. And here we come with one of the main issues of the current situation. Right now, the teaching change, the students are receiving the teaching through different media, through different modalities, but the documents have not changed. The documents remain the same. And probably we would need to examine what pedagogical model we have and if it really matches these new situations, these new conditions, right? Under which we're teaching right now. Because it's not just a matter, or well, that's what some institutions have thought, but it's not just a matter of moving what you traditionally did in the classroom to the computer screen or the cell phone screen. You have to make adjustments for things to work. Now, we also need to consider the levels of curriculum development. There is a macro level, a meso level, and of course a micro level for planning. And all these levels are involved directly in the curriculum, but there are different actors for each of them. For example, here in Colombia, the Ministry of Education at the national level has to issue the standards, the official standards of what education should reach, what students should be able to do. We have, for example, for English, we have the basic standards of competence, we have the basic learning rights, etc. And there are some general orientations. In the case of English, these orientations are in the suggested curriculum for English, both for primary education and secondary education. But then we have a middle level for the school curriculum. But we already mentioned Proyecto Educativo Institucional in the case of Colombia. Who designs this? So the schools should design this curriculum, should not be imposed or transferred from the ministry or any other official institution. So all the teachers should participate. All the teachers should be familiar with it, okay? Although, unfortunately, in many schools, we know that that's not always the case. Then we have the syllabus. The syllabus, it's more specific. Well, the school curriculum is obviously for the whole school. The syllabus is going to concentrate in the different subject areas, is what we call the plan de área. So there's a general syllabus for math, for English, for Spanish and literature, and these different subject areas. And then we have a more specific level of planning. Of course, well, here in Colombia, we don't, apart from these general area syllabus, we have a very specific syllabi for the different grades, for 7th grade, for 8th grade, for 9th grade, which is what we call plan de aula. And then we come to a more detailed, a more specific level, which is also part of the larger curriculum. That's what I said at the beginning. The curriculum is everything. It's not just the three main aspects I listed at the beginning, because everything that happens in the classroom is actually part of the curriculum. Hopefully, that would be planned as well. I see there are some comments. No comments yet. Okay, so I'm going to continue. But what happens in the classroom is also part of the curriculum. Hopefully, what happens there will be planned as well, but there are many unplanned teaching events that happen in the day-to-day classroom. So we, unfortunately, as teachers, we have little effect on the macro level. And I say unfortunately because it should be the other way around. The ministry, instead of turning their backs to teachers and students, they should include them. But unfortunately, we know here in Colombia that this is the way it works. But at all the other levels, teachers should have a voice, and especially at the lesson plan level, they are the main protagonists. I mean, you design, you plan what happens in your classroom and what goes on, and you should have control over it. So enough about curriculum. I'm sure it was just like a review. I'm sure you all knew that part. Now, but let's talk about these modalities or these options in technology-mediated teaching. Usually, well, there are many options, but let's summarize it to only 3 options. One is distance or remote learning. The other one is blended learning. And the third one is face-to-face technology-assisted environments. When we talk about distance remote learning, we're talking about environments in which the teacher is a facilitator of learning and a creator of content, educational content and material. The student should be self-regulated and autonomous, because the main characteristics is that students have to navigate a learning environment or a learning management system on their own, and they're not going to be having constant contact with the teachers or simultaneous lessons. So a lot of the work in distance education, or some people prefer to call it virtual education, it's going to be autonomously, students working by themselves. There's a lot of use of asynchronous communication. We're going to go into more detail in what is asynchronous, although I'm sure many of you are familiar. But basically, the teacher, through a learning system, leaves tasks or assignments for the students to complete online or offline, but then they share them online, okay? There's individualization of instruction. So a lot of what happens should be individualized and should be tailored to student needs and their own pace, their own rhythm. There are deadlines, of course, but each student can be working on his or her own, and they don't have to be together all the time. A very common example is MOOCs, right? Massive online courses, okay, open courses, usually in the Moodle platform. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them. There's also a very famous platform called Coursera that offers this kind of MOOCs, and they are massive because you can have 200, 300 students connected on learning. And that is possible because most of the work is independent and autonomous. And there are a few, if at all, simultaneous online sessions, but most of the work is done individually. A common example or a famous example is English.works at the SENA. They have different online courses, and they are planned like that, to be completely online with little interaction between the student and the teacher, okay? So the platform is essential in that case, because what you expect is the students to learn on their own. We have blended learning. Blended learning has come to be a broader category with many subdivisions and many different options. Again, the teacher is a facilitator and content creator. Okay, so the view of learning is usually that the teacher is not the expert that is going to give you everything, but the teacher is going to create conditions for you as a student to learn on your own. However, in blended learning, a percentage of instruction, let's call it like that, percentage of teacher presence is expected. Blended learning combines online session with face-to-face sessions. In the current situation, it would be more synchronous and asynchronous sessions, or simultaneous and non-simultaneous sessions of learning and tasks. That's what we have next, combined use of synchronous and asynchronous communication. There's a lot of cooperative learning, as opposed to the individualization of instruction. Pair work, group work is expected, is necessary. And one typical example is what is being recently labeled as the flipped classroom. In the flipped classroom, students work on the material asynchronously on their own, but then when they get together on live or synchronous sessions, they practice, they apply, they use that information. So the traditional lecture is supposed to disappear. Students receive the lecture through videos or by reading materials or a combination of both. But when they come to the synchronous session, basically they come to have the practice, to do activities, to solve problems in the presence of the teacher, but not necessarily with the teacher all the time just lecturing them, telling them what to do or how to learn. And finally, we have the face-to-face tech-aided environment. That's, we may say, a traditional classroom, but with some access to technology. We can, again, subdivide it how much access you have to that technology, whether you have a multimedia lab, or you just have, a video beam and a laptop in your classroom. Here, it's not always so, but it tends to be the case that the teacher is the expert, is the instructor. They are usually very teacher-fronted. For example, if there is a video, is the teacher who controls the video, who plays the video, right? Students access the technology in the classroom in the presence of the teacher. However, in spite of being teacher-fronted classrooms, they might be very communicative. Teachers might implement communicative activities. They might implement tasks, communicative tasks. But the main characteristics is that the technology is just a tool. It's not the main means for instruction. And it's not the medium of all instruction. This instruction is face-to-face. I'm sure many of you had these contexts, and now with the pandemic situation, we were forced somehow to move from number 3 to number 2, or in some cases to number 1. Is one that is best or better? That's going to depend on the students, on the conditions, on the characteristics. Right now, number 3 is not longer an option. So, but what about between 1 and 2? So, because of the current situation and the actual conditions, blended learning has been the options for most schools, is what is expected from teachers. And it's the one that most of us are implementing right now. Okay, how do you develop a curriculum? There are different models, and we're just going to take a very brief look at 3 of them. We have the famous ADDIE model, we have Brown's 1995 model, and Nation and McAllister 2010 model. So the ADDIE model was developed in the 80s, and it was not developed for online or technology environments. However, is the one that is most frequently used for this purpose. Okay, ADDIE is an acronym for analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. Analyze implies exploration of how things are and the way they should be. The difference is the performance gap. So it's basically what the students know and what they need to know, right? And the performance gap is that distance between their current state and the ideal state. In language teaching terminology, we would call that the needs analysis. The next step is design. If a performance gap is identified, this phase will outline performance objectives. So Now that I know what is the difference between what students need and what the students have, so I can plan objectives and plan activities for um, for closing that gap, for reducing that distance. The next step would be develop, and this is when all those designs, those objectives actually become a reality. So it's very frequent. This model is frequently used for online lessons or for online teaching because of that. Because at the development stage, that's where you create the type of materials or the type of activities and the type of interactions that you will need. And if you are in a technology mediated environment, that's where you create, if you have to create, uh, the interface, the platform, or the, the virtual class, so to speak, that you need. But you don't just develop it out of the blue. You first need to know what are the goals and what are the student needs. After that, you implement it, is the actual delivery of the performance solution, is the actual development or implementation of the classes, of the lessons. All along the process, you are evaluating. All the time, you are evaluating whether the objectives are being achieved, whether your plans, your activities are working, right? So evaluation is not only, the testing of students, but is the evaluation, the assessment of your whole program. And it's cyclical, as you can see, it's represented as a cycle because after implementation, you go back to analyzing. And this analysis is going to take you or to lead you to determine if that performance gap has been closed, how far are you from closing it, or what you need to do in order to close it. If we look at Brown's model, this is specifically for language teaching. It's, we can say, a classic model, but it's very similar, right? Again, we start from analyzing needs, developing objectives, designing materials, the actual teaching, which would be equivalent to the implementation in the other model, and testing. However, Brown agrees that evaluation, beyond just testing, evaluation of the whole program, it's part of the whole cycle and should be in every step of the process. And then Nation and McAllister, they have a more interesting way of representing the curriculum development. First, you have to consider your principles. By principles, basically they mean the view of learning, the view of language, what is language, what is it for, right? What is the role of the teacher, what is the role of the student? The needs. Then again, what students need the language for? What is the role of that language in the society? Are they going to use it for specific purposes, for general purposes? Are they going to travel? And then the environment. And here the environment becomes crucial because of the current situation. So if I work in a rural school with no internet, no computers, I cannot plan technology mediated curriculum. Or I have to consider what technology is available and design based on that technology. The environment includes what are the conditions of the schools, but in the current situation, we will have to consider the conditions of connectivity of our students at home. After that, they consider other three stages that should be connected to the outer circle. And in the inner circle, they have content and sequencing. So once we know what our students needs, so what content, what teaching materials, what teaching units will enable them to satisfy or those needs or to meet those needs. And in what sequence, what order should that content be presented? Then we have format and presentation. So that's how you actually design the lessons and the classes. What order, what structure, what type of activities. And in the current situation, is at this level when you should consider what interface, what technology, if you have the option, what I want students to do and what tools will allow them to reach those goals. And finally, there's monitoring and assessment, which is determining whether those needs are being satisfied, whether those goals are have been achieved. So, but you say, well, but none of these models have actually been designed for virtual or online education. And the truth is that virtual education has used models that were not developed for visual education because the main principles are there. In every model, you need to know your students need what your students need. You need to know your context, what resources you have in that context. And then you design some goals, and then it's when you're going to think of what are the activities for those goals, okay? Now, let's talk briefly about principles of technology-mediated teaching and learning. And basically, here we're going to talk about views of learning and views of education, which are the main views of learning are that underlie the online teaching. So I have these three pictures. What theories of education do you think they represent? And yes, you can answer through the chat, or we can, if you want, you can open your mic and answer. So we have a picture of a rat, wheel press lever for foot. We have these gear being put together. And we have these a man with special virtual reality goggles. So what do you think, what theories do you think are being represented there? Would anyone like to guess? Okay, here we have some comments in the chat. Number two, the second one. Okay, scaffolding, all right. Oh, sorry. Okay, here we have from Adriana Valencia. Thank you, Adriana. Oh, sorry, I just moved the slide. Number one, behaviorism. Great. Yes. Number two, constructivism. And what do you think it's number three?
Connectivism.
Connectivism. Okay, very good. So yes, although it's hard to believe, a lot of computer-based or technology-based education, it's supported by behaviorism, okay? You know, whenever you go to a website that has these interactive games or interactive exercises, basically that's behaviorism. They offer, and that's what computers or technologies do best, okay? Here, the idea is that the computer is a tutor, or in this case, the platform is a tutor. Okay, the platform is going to offer, I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical problem with my cat. Okay, the platform is going to be uh, the tutor. So it presents a number of explanations, a number of exercises. It can present hundreds of exercises, okay, uh, thousands of questions, and students answer. And based on their answer, they receive, um, a reward, like letters in green color, or a happy face, or a little bell that rings, or stimulating comments. So yes, a lot of online education is still very behavioristic, or behaviorist, actually. And if it's in some cases, when you look at the MOOCs, or some distance education programs, it's always the teacher creating the forums, creating the questions, and that's the stimulus, and the students give a response. And based on the response, they receive a reward. So that's very behavioristic. Behaviorism has survived all the criticisms that it has received, but I hope, well, or the idea is that we see it, okay, is an option. We can use some behaviors elements. There's nothing wrong with that. But I hope your whole curriculum or your whole design is not based only on behaviorism. So the second one, it's supposed to represent constructivism. This is the metaphor that knowledge is a structure that is built. So students build their own knowledge through experiences, through interaction, through cooperation. And teachers just provide the tools and the conditions for that building, for that construction to happen. So this theory of learning is ideal for online education. But here the metaphor is not that the computer is going to be a tutor or a teacher. No, here the computer or the interface or the platform is going to be a tool, a means to an end, okay? And the teacher has to be present there. So when we think of blended learning, when we think of uh, live sessions in which we hope students to interact, to participate, to work in groups, uh, to work in tasks and projects. So we are taking a more constructivist stance of learning. And a huge percentage of online teaching is based on this view, the view of building knowledge, new knowledge through interaction. Now, the third one, it was mentioned as connectivism. Actually, it represents different theories. I mean, I'm just presented three, but there are many theories associated or connected with um, online teaching. But this is supposed to represent connectivism, but also situated learning. In situated learning, then again, we have the idea that the computer is, or the platform is again a tool, a means to an end, and it's not going to be the tutor, it's not going to be a curricular element, it's just one more resource. But in situated learning, students should be faced with real situations, with real problems, and they should work together, and they should work in their own contexts, under their own conditions, in order to solve those problems. So it's a view of learning based on practice, on doing, and doing realistic things. Okay. Although you might, of course, in every, we know that teaching, unfortunately, it's very artificial. The classroom, it's very detached from the real world. But the idea with situated learning is that we reduce that gap. We reduce the gap between the classroom and the real world. Okay. And technology has been ideal in providing conditions for that to happen. Of course, you can do it without technology in your traditional classroom, but situated learning really had a boost when online education started. Well, and connectivism, it's very similar. It has two main parts, a cognitive part that says that cognition is social and situated. So opposed to this idea that the brain is a sort of computer and it's very individual, in connectivism, we think that uh, our knowledge is social and each of us is a node in a network of shared knowledge. And of course, it's easier, but not exclusively possible, to establish those connections through technologies, and especially social networks. So if we think of this, I'm sure you remember the acronym CALL, Computer Assisted Language Learning. It's very connected to this behaviorist view of computers as being tutors, as being a key curricular element, be the provider of activities. But in these two views, we prefer the term computer-mediated communication, because what we want is the students to collaborate, to communicate, and basically the computers are the means for that communication to happen, okay? So what to take into account when planning a tech-mediated curriculum? The goals and content, as in any curriculum, regardless of whether it's going to be in a regular classroom, it's going to be face-to-face, it's going to be with the most advanced technology or the simpler technology, we need to have clear goals and contents. And there we're talking about, what do I want students to be able to do? And what knowledge do they need to achieve those goals? Interactions is the second element that we need to consider. When talking about interactions, is what type of interactions do I want to create in classes? What kind of connections between the students and between the contents I want to take place, okay? And then, of course, I need to consider what interactions best help students reach the goal. And the last point that we should consider is the technology. What platform, what technology best suits the goal and facilitates these interactions, okay? What technology is more accessible to the students? So one of the main problems is that we usually go the other way around. We first consider the technology and then we go backwards to the other steps. But no, we should always go in this direction. Have clear goals, consider the type of interactions, and then you choose the technology that best facilitates those two. And of course, you need to consider how accessible that technology is. If you want to use Nearpod, or you want to use Moodle, but your students cannot access it, then there's no point in having it. So let's take a look at each of these one by one. When we're talking about goals and content, we need to state the goals in terms of actions beyond the classroom and actions that reflect real life language use. So here we have two examples of objectives or goals. Which one do you think is best or better stated? We have students will narrate experiences such as their last holiday, the best moment of their life, or memories from their childhood. And the other one that is students will write sentences in the simple past with the correct verb. So which one would be better?
The first one.
The first one, of course, because it's an action that implies communication and goes beyond the classroom, okay? And the students will narrate experiences not only in the classroom, but they will write sentences in the simple past, probably only in the classroom. Okay, the use of technology is a means, not an end by itself. So we have 4 different examples of objectives. 2 are a good example of this principle, and two are not. Which ones do you think are the two that best represent these principle for setting goals? I'm having problems. I am supposed to watch the chat, but I cannot see it. So if you want, you just can open your mic and talk to us.
For teach simple past is good to a student will narrate past experience orally with fluency in a presentation short video because it's not traditional. A student can narrate something in past. It's most I don't know, enjoyable for the student that to write in a test. I don't know. It maybe it's easier for the student because he can record and present, tell something, a story. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very
I,
much.
ag- I, I agree. I agree with number three because it focuses on the objective and not on the resources. So when you say that they can use a presentation or short video, it doesn't matter which platform they're going to use. But what is important here is the narration of the past experience orally.
Great. So all of them include some technology, right? Students will create a poster using Canva. Students will learn how to use Canva. Students will narrate past experience oh, well, there are a lot of typos. I'm really sorry. I will correct them before I share them with all of you. Well, students will narrate past experiences orally with fluency in a presentation or short video. And the last one, students will create a video in YouTube. The second and the fourth, they place the technology as the end. I mean, the goal is the technology, is using the technology. The technology, of course, is important, but it should not be the end by itself, but just a means to that end. So the first and the third are very best examples of these principles, because students will be creating something, will be using the language, will be using their ideas with some means, with some technology. Okay.
So, Carlos, I can say something about it.
Sure.
About number three, I think when in number three, when you say present in a presentation or short video, we as teachers, we can not only give the students the technology, the tool, maybe the student regarding their abilities, they can use whatever tool for them is easier than the other ones. Because maybe Canva, but I don't know how to use Canva, or maybe YouTube, but maybe that the student can create and we can promote creativity in our students. So very important for me, for example, as a teacher.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So yes, here, so the main goal is that the students create a poster about any topic they want. They will use some technology for it. But then again, our goal is the poster, right? In fact, we can change the second part, but we should not have as a goal the technologies in itself. And as you said, that would be like promoting or even imposing the technologies to our students, right? So on the third one, they will create a presentation. They will be using the language. They will be creating something meaningful for them, but they can present it, simply in a PowerPoint, or they can just create a video with the cell phone. Or if they have the resources, maybe they can use more advanced platforms for that. But the main goal is this, the narration and such, not the technology. So many times we fall in the temptation of concentrated on the technology. I want my students to learn to use Mentimeter. That's not really important. Well, it is, of course, but That Mentimeter or Canva or YouTube is just it's a means. It should not be the end of what you want to teach. Okay. Another tip or principle, choose first the skills or behaviors to be learned and then derive the content. We language teachers, we usually think first of the content and then of the objective, right? So, oh, my next class is about the simple past, or my next class is about comparatives and superlatives, right? But those are contents. Those are units of knowledge that, of course, students need, okay? And then when we decided, okay, I'm going to teach the comparatives and superlatives, we think of a context or a situation to introduce that. But it should be the other way around. We should think of in what context, in what situation, what communicative or function we want them to be able to do, and then select all the grammar, all the vocabulary, all the pronunciation. So we first establish an objective like this. Students will narrate experiences such as their last holiday, the best moment of their life, or memories from their childhood. And then we think, okay, if I want them to do that, what grammar do they need? What vocabulary do they need? And what phonological or pronunciation aspects do they need, right? So first, the skill or the behaviors or the standards, the basic learning rights, and then you, from that, analyze and tell, this is the content. Whether you're going to present that content, again, with a YouTube video, or you're going to present it, I don't know, as I'm doing now, right, with a lecture, that's secondary, okay? But first you have to know what they're going to do, and then all these linguistic elements needed for that. Yes, Rafael, you raised your hand. Please.
Yes, Carlos. The thing is that this is something to keep in mind, which is the correct reading of the context, because this is not something to demonize the lectures or these kinds of presentations, because, for example, in some cases, what we need is a lecture like this. But we need to read the context in which our students are involved. And according to that context, we make decisions. This is not something like a prescription, like a medicine that you do this and this and this and next this. No, this is something that you need to adapt according to the needs of the audience. In this case, our students. But in this case of this lecture, the audience is us. And we need these kind of resources that the one you're presenting today and we actually enjoying. So it is really important that people keep in mind, I mean, we as professors, we keep in mind that the context in which our students are going to be involved is very important in order for us to make decisions about the pedagogical practices we're going to use.
Thank you, Rafael. Oh, yes, of course. In the next part of the presentation, we're going to see that traditional or what we call traditional or lectures or teaching or presentation is not bad, right? It's one of the options. But let's take a chance. We have some comment. George says, technology is sort of motivation, which means it creates interest in the class. I completely agree with you. But then again, remember, the technology, it's all, you always have to think of it as the means, as the tool, and not the goal by itself, okay? And remember, I mean, you can have very, very advanced technology and be doing very behaviorist things, right? Cesar says, technology shouldn't change a curriculum. Technology must adapt to contextualize curriculum. That's right. I said at the beginning that if we are changing the way we teach, we probably need to review our curriculum. But also, we first have the curriculum and then we choose the technology. Okay, that's very important. Thank you for your comment. Okay, so let's move on to interactions. Okay, so I'm going to present two types of ways of classifying interactions. Well, traditionally, we can classify the class interactions according to who interacts with whom. Okay, so the first one that is very common, is the teacher to the whole class. Okay, when we use this to present or deliver information, to provide explanations, examples, to model specific language or specific functions, behaviors. Okay, one suggestion, one recommendation, use it sparingly. Okay, you can use teacher to whole class. Of course, you can present, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're going to be 2 hours just presenting, of course, that's probably going to have negative effects. You're going to lose, and especially, I mean, if a 2 hours lecture face to face might be tiring, it's even more tiring. And it's a contradiction because that's what I'm doing, but it's going to be even more tiring through the computer. Well, teacher to whole class. And what tools can I use to do that? Well, in Zoom or Google Meet, just like we are doing right now. So you are the audience, I am the presenter, I am giving you information. I put the Zoom logo here, but you could do it perfectly as well with Google Classrooms. You can use Flipgrid. Flipgrid, I don't remember, well, I know it was in the building teaching session last year by Universidad Autónoma. It's an app that allows you to create videos. So you can create tutorial videos and you can share videos with the students, and the students can like the videos. You can project the video simultaneously or synchronously or asynchronously. So it's basically you as a teacher, as the video creator, giving information to your whole class. So since these videos tend to be shorter, it might be a more interesting option compared to just these kind of online synchronous session. And in the video, you can put effects, etc., etc., etc. And it's very easy to use, but of course, it doesn't have to be Flipgrid. I'm just giving you an example. You could use any other video creator online that is free and accessible. And another option is Canva. If you look at this presentation that I'm showing you, I created it in Canva. I downloaded it and I'm showing you a PDF, but I could also just create the presentation, add audio to the presentation, and then you can share it. You can share it directly from Canva, or you can embed it in Google Sites, or you can embed it in any blog, or you just send the link through WhatsApp. Okay, so these are options for this, for the teacher to the whole class, and these are the purposes of this kind of interaction. Then again, there's nothing wrong with it, but don't overuse it. And yes, as Rafael said, for some content, for some topics, at some point, teacher to the whole class interaction might be necessary, okay? And it might very well work for your students. So consider that when deciding it or using it. Students to whole class. So now you flip the roles, and now are the students teaching the students, are the students giving information. So when we use it, the students share their experience in completing a task or project. The students teach or lecture their classmates on content they have researched. It's very important because we usually tend to tell the students just to present a material that all students have. So basically we are asking them to repeat what all the other students have read on their own or could read on their own. But it's best if you have students share new knowledge that they have researched on their own. Even better if their classmates don't have that knowledge. So they are really teaching the others. That's the third principle. Avoid having students repeat content from the other materials the whole class have. So it's better if when you use this interaction, the student to the whole class, the student as a presenter or as a teacher, it's better if they are actually teaching something that the others don't know and that the others might need. Again, you can use the same tools. You can have students present in Zoom or Google Meet. They can create a tutorial video in Flipgrid or YouTube, or they can create interactive presentations in Canva, SlideShare, or many others. I'm giving you examples, but remember, whether you use Canva or SlideShare is going to be secondary. It will depend on the access students have and the goals that you want to achieve. So students to student, very common, very frequent for pair work, for information gap tasks or activities, role plays, collaborative work. But when we do it online, we need to have breakout rooms. You have that here in Zoom. There is an extension for Google Meet that if you download it and you add it to your computer, you will have also a breakout room facility or sorry, app in your Google Meet. So it's great. There are different options. If not, any platform or any chat options can allow you to separate the students from the main room or from the main session and to interact. However, it's very important. I mean, in our face-to-face classroom, we had students work in pairs, remember? And well, you were there and you could listen to them. You surely remember that most of the times they were speaking Spanish or they were talking about something else. So you could, you know, keep them back on track, right? Like Perez, Gonzalez. Go back to the main task, right? Now it's more difficult, of course. So it's important that you keep supervising that pair work, right? So whatever tool you're using, make sure that you have that option. That when you break the main room in separate rooms, as a teacher, you can access, you can enter, and you can check what they're doing. If you're using any chat option, like Hangouts or even WhatsApp, so tell the students that you need evidence that they were working, so they can keep, you know, screenshots of their interaction. Maybe you can make it mandatory that they share or that they send you that evidence of their work. And finally, you have to have a smart strategy for pairing. So in our face-to-face classroom, we just told students, okay, work with the person sitting next to you, or you just took the lesson, okay, Bolivar is going to work with Ramirez and so on, right? But here, or well, and this is my experience, when you just tell the students, okay, get in pairs, and just tell me the pairs and I'll create the breakout rooms. Oh, my neighbors are having so much noise, sorry. Well, but they get distracted. They get so easily distracted that they lose a lot of time getting in pairs. So I just recommend that you have pre-designed and a strategy for making the pairs. Breakout rooms can assign these pairs randomly, or if you have already pre-selected the groups, or you tell them the class before that, okay, we're going to do a pair work activity. So before we come to class, make sure you already have your pair. So you need to have a pairing strategy. Group work. So here we have groups of 3 to 4 people. Usually for group work, it's very important that you give them a clear goal or a clear result that you expect the group to have. but also that you assign roles to group members, okay? Usually you have like a spokesperson, someone who is going to share the results of the group. You have commentators, you have um, the, if it is a task in which they have to decide the advantages and disadvantages. So someone in the group is in charge of identifying all the advantages and someone else of the disadvantages and so on. But just don't tell them, okay, get in groups and do this. No, do this, and these are your roles, assign your roles, and try to make sure that work is going to be evenly distributed. And here, you can also have, or you should have, a clear grouping strategy, but it's also recommended that you vary your grouping strategy. So if for one class, you do it randomly, for the next class, maybe you have pre-established groups, and for the third class, you tell them to select the groups, or, well, as we did in the classroom, remember, like, okay, you assign colors and all the blues are in a group, all the greens are in a group, etc. So what can you use for this? Again, breakout rooms, whether in Google Meet or in Zoom. Now WhatsApp has group video calls. Most students do have WhatsApp, so it's a good option. I personally don't like having WhatsApp groups with my students, but I know many teachers do it, and they have their strategies to keep those groups working and focused on the learning. So that's an option that you can use. And there's a new app, or well, a new platform. It's called Kumu Space, and it combines. It's very interesting. I haven't used it that much, but I mean, when you enter, you have an avatar, and your avatar physically moves in the open space. So you tell them to get in groups, and then the 3 or 4 avatars get together, but they can move in that virtual room from one group to the other. And it's very interesting. Of course, if you want, you may give it a try. You can explore it and see if it works for you. I'm not, advertising it, but it might be a good option. And the other type of interaction is computer to student. Again, as I told you, there are thousands or thousands of websites that already have exercises on grammar, on vocabulary, interactive games, and you can use them. There's no problem with them. My only suggestion is that the whole class and the whole practice cannot only be this type of activities. So in the computer to student interaction, you can use interactive exercises and drills. They are good for memorizing. Memorization is a part of learning, but it's not the only way of learning. They are very effective for close-ended questions or for discrete practice. If you want to practice one specific type of vocabulary, one specific type of grammar. There are also very nice interactive games, games with words, with vocabulary, matching, pairing, these memory games, and they are very motivating for the students. They are ideal for additional practice, for reinforcement, and you can use existing ones, or you can create your own. For example, the Cambridge English website has 140 exercises. Some of them are pragmatic, some of them are on listening, some of them are on reading. And it's these kind of exercises that there is one answer and they provide feedback to the student. You can just tell the students to answer a number of activities and send you, the screenshot of how they did. And it's a way of practicing, and it's also part of learning the language. But you can create your own, computer to student questions through Kahoot, through Google Forms, through quizzes, or to any of the many platforms that allows you to do that. Okay, another way to classify the interactions is basically the distinction between synchronous and asynchronous. We have already talked about it. Just a few more comments about that. Synchronous, well, this is synchronous, right? This logo here. Synchronous communication or interactions are simultaneous and they happen in real time. They can be written through chats or oral in video calls or both. Like any chat, most chat today allow students to share pictures, to share voice messaging. So that's an option. For cooperative work, they are excellent. Synchronous interactions are for collaborative activities, for interactive activities, when you want computer mediated communication. Students learning from students, working with students, and the computer is just the means for that communication. Suggestions: have a clear purpose for these activities and for this communication, right? Not, okay, get together and answer these 4 questions. Well, that's a clear goal, but it's better if, okay, now get together and you're going to create a story about, or get together and you're going to propose a solution to this issue, etc. And of course, it's necessary to have time limits. Okay, it's very easy that students get distracted, that they wander around the bushes. So give them time. And one of the things is that depending on the platform that you're using, you can actually control the time. In Zoom, for example, if people are divided into breakout rooms, they are given the possibility to, you are given the possibility to bring them back to the main room. Well, these are different tools that you can use for synchronous interaction, Humo Space, any chat application like Hangouts, WhatsApp, breakout rooms in Zoom or Google Meet. And this one is very nice. I really like it. It's Lucid Chart, it's called. And it's specially designed for creating graphic organizers, like a flow chart or mind maps, etc. But the good thing is that you can share it and you can have 4 or 5 students working together in the same graphic organizer. So it's very useful for their, and when they are sharing it, there is a chat tool so they can work together and they can interact through the chat. It doesn't have voice messaging, but written interaction. Asynchronous communication then is obviously non-simultaneous. A question or topic is posted and participant can reply on their own time. It's usually common in forums, assignments. You can ask video responses, file uploading or sharing. These are typical types of asynchronous activities. Participants do not need to be connected at the same time. It can be used for tasks or activities that require more time, elaboration, reflection, or accuracy. Sure.
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat, please, the name of the app or of the website that you told us it was for creating maps, like groupally, please? Because I
Sure.
didn't listen to
Sure. Lucid Chart.
Lucid Chart?
Yes. Let me.
Lucid. Okay. Lucid.
It's on the chat. It's on the chat.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rafael.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, because it will be very useful for my class. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, so you use it for tasks or activities that require more time, elaboration, reflection, or accuracy. I mean, when you want your students, in a chat, in a simultaneous chat, students will be very fast, interacting, making suggestions, giving ideas. And yes, probably they will be very fluid, but probably will make many mistakes, okay? That's okay, that's part of learning. Mistakes are not to be banned. But if you want something more elaborate in which they can create a first version or a first draft and then a second draft, and you wanted to be very careful with the language they use or very elaborate, then it's better to have asynchronous tasks. And you have to make sure to create the conditions for student-to interaction, which is not inherent. I mean, many asynchronous activities tend to be very, you know, teacher to student, student to teacher. I mean, interaction does not happen naturally, but one way to do this is that apart from asking students to answer to you, you can ask them to also answer, to also check, excuse me, their partners' responses, to comment, or their partners. Now, you know, now, for example, a very asynchronous task can be asking the students to create a video in Flipgrid or in YouTube. They upload the video, and all their classmates can watch the video later. They don't have to watch it, you know, simultaneously in class, and they just have to like and leave a comment. So the creators of the video are completing one task, and the others are participating as well, and there is some interaction. And hopefully, maybe someone might, you know, reply or comment back to their classmates. In fact, you can even have asynchronous activities using Instagram. So where you can have, or what tools can you use for asynchronous tasks? Well, Moodle, if you have access to it. Many universities use it. Is it the Campus Virtual is basically Moodle. Google Classroom, it also allows you to create forums or this kind of file sharing tasks. Google Docs, you can just have a Google Doc with a specific question and just ask the students to enter there, leave their answer, and also leave a comment to a classmate's answer. You can simply use email. It doesn't have to be that complicated or that elaborate. Or as I just told you, you can use Facebook, you can use Instagram. So students post something in their Facebook, and their classmates comment, reply, like, share. These kind of interactions can be promoted, and it doesn't have to be in real time. You can just, okay, you have 1 week to visit your classmates' post, leave comments, etc. I know many people don't like Facebook for teaching purposes, but it's an option. Students usually do have already an account. They are very familiar with it. The same happens with Instagram. In fact, many students today don't have Facebook and do have Instagram. So it wasn't its original purpose, but you can adapt it. Well, so far so good. Are there any comments or questions? Shall we move on? Apparently, there's no comments in the chat.
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, well, remember, in the chat, you will find also the link to the attendance form. Please remember to fill it up before we finish. Okay, now what platform, what technology? So that's going to depend on the available resources, on the expected learning outcomes, and on student actual needs, okay? So as I told you before, once you have your clear goals, which is the expected learning outcomes, once you know what interactions you want to use to achieve those goals, is when you try to decide in what are you going to use. So I just showed you a number of options. There are many more. Probably you know other options, and probably the ones you know are better or more effective than the ones that I show you. But the point is that, okay, Flipgrid is more fashion or more recent than YouTube. I want to use it. That's not the real reason to use it. The real reason is, okay, first, is it available? Is it easy to access? Can students really use it? Does it demand too much, you know, bandwidth or too much connectivity? As a matter of fact, as a teacher, can I use it, right? With my computer or my, you know, plan de datos, can I use it? So that's first. Okay, then what I want students to learn, can that be achieved or practiced or developed using Flipgrid? Is it really going to be useful for that? Creating a video tutorial or a short, introduction in video, is it what I want them to learn? And then, do they need it? Do they need that knowledge, that technology? Is it going to be motivated? Is it going to be too difficult to learn? So you have to consider all that before deciding if you're going to use YouTube or Flipgrid or etc. So when making those decisions, remember, less is more, okay? So do not choose the more trendy or the hottest app or the hottest tools. You better try to choose, I mean, it doesn't matter, probably there's one that is not so fashion or so modern, but it's the one that actually works for your purposes, okay? Another tip, the simpler, or another principle actually, the simpler, the better. If you have, for example, it's better to use tools or apps in which students can access with their Google account or their Facebook account, and that don't require them, to create an account, log in, create a new password, memorize the password, access the security code. I mean, if it is necessary, okay, go through the whole process and tell your students to go through the whole process. But if there's something else that does the same without all those steps, but just use your Google account, that is going to be simpler and easier. And you're not going to spend half your class waiting for the students to create the account. Another main purpose, multi-device access. Most platforms and most apps today are multi-device access. I mean, you can access from a computer, from tablet, from the cell phone. So those are better. If you have one that doesn't work, that work only on cell phones or it works only on computers, probably that's not the best choice. Because remember, for some students, the main device is going to be a tablet or a cell phone. So you cannot just rely or depend on one type of device. User friendliness. Key, that's key. It has to be something easy to use, that very intuitive, that students don't need to, take a class to learn to use the app. The easier it is, the better. Of course, it's preferably to use open access and freeware, things that in which you don't have to pay and the students don't have to pay. Of course, if you have the resources and you want to pay for something very elaborate, knock yourself out. But my suggestion is that we, for educational purposes, try to benefit or to use open access. And also, something very important, something that is reusable. So in Google Form, if you create some kind of interactive game or a quiz, it's good that that quiz might be available and can be used again. If you create a presentation, a slideshow in Canva or an infographic, it's very useful if that is something that you can use later again with the same group or with a different group. Okay, now we're moving to the last point of the presentation. Just give me a minute. Okay, so, wow, it's 5:30 already. Okay, what are the options and models for, of course, there are hundreds of models. We are going to concentrate on three. The PPP, the TVLT, and the 5 Es. If you notice, I'm sure you're already familiar with the first two. In fact, I try to organize them from the more, let's say, traditional to the more innovative, if we should call it some way. And also from the less communicative to the more creative or communicative. So PPP is presentation practice production. The first P is for presentation. You introduce new functional or linguistic items in a context, usually a dialogue, a song, or a reading. Today, for example, you can do the presentation stage with YouTube videos. There are hundreds of tutorials and hundreds of dialogues at the restaurant, at the bank, dialogues for ESL learners, people talking about their daily routine, etc., for you to present this new language. And eslflow.com is a website. It's full also of dialogues, reading materials. They are graded, and you can just download them for free. And then when you present this new language, you have students pay attention to the target or the target's functions or language. And you can either help them infer the rule or the function, or you can just show them. How can you do this? Well, just like I'm doing right now, the presentation stage, you can have let's say, lecturing phase with Zoom or Google Meet, in which you deliver the information, a teacher to whole class interaction. Or you can have like an infographic created in Canva or any other app or tool that you're familiar with. Practice. The practice is the part in which you have the students use or apply the rule. You let them manipulate the language. You try to combine different exercises from more control to less control, or from more close-ended to open-ended. And it's better if you try to use interactive games. So you can use Cambridge English, you can use ESL Flow. I like very much this site, Match the Memory, because in there you create your account and you can create these different kind of vocabulary games. So you include the list of words with the definitions, and the website create the like memory games and matching games, etc. And the other one is Quizlet. Quizlet basically does the same. You create flashcards with the word, the definition, the translation, the picture, and it automatically creates matching games, answering games, typing games. And then the production stage, well, students create their own meanings and use the language creatively. They provide more, a suggestion is you try to provide more opportunities for pair work and group work. And in this stage, you better favor open-ended creative activities and give students a product or outcome. Again, here you use any of the tools that allows you group work and student-student interaction. So the presentation practice production, we can say it's very traditional. We have used it. Many people criticize it, but it gives you a lot of control. So if you are a little bit insecure in these new platforms, maybe, and depending on your students and their needs, maybe this model is a correct option for you. Or if you're teaching a kind of content or a kind of goal that is very, functional or linguistic, this option might work. And it's easy to adapt to these new technologies and resources. Task-based lesson, they go in the opposite direction, right? In the presentation, practice, production, you first teach and then the students create. Here, students first create and use the language, and then after they use the language, you sort of teach them. Okay, so that traditionally the task-based model has the pre-task, the task cycle, or the language focus. For simplicity, we just call it pre-task, task, and post-task. So in the pre-task, you have to introduce the task and present the expected outcome. You have to pre-teach useful or necessary vocabulary to present a model of the outcome or a parallel and similar task, and you activate previous knowledge. What can you use to create that? You can have your students, for example, access Padlet, and then they can brainstorm, or they can add pictures, or they can answer questions, or they can create like a collage of what they know about the topic. With Kahoot and these kind of game, well, or quizzes, if you like, you can activate their previous knowledge with questions related to the task or to the product or to the topic. For showing a model of the outcome, you can find a tutorial or a YouTube video showing what you actually want your students to create, right? For introducing the task, you can use Zoom or Google Meet. You can, teacher to whole class interaction, right? Just tell them what is the task about and what is the expected outcome. And for pre-teaching useful vocabulary, you can use Quizlet. Then again, this is a suggestion. You can use Quizlet or any other option you're familiar with. The task cycle, well, you have students work in pairs or groups, you monitor their work and assist if necessary, and then you have students report or share their outcomes. What tools can you use for this? Well, any tools that favor student-student interaction, group work or pair work, okay, that we have already mentioned. And for sharing their results, then is student to whole class interaction. So it's going to be the students sharing their screen and playing the role of the teacher. And then the post task. Well, in this stage, you provide feedback, you provide language-focused practice, you reflect on the content and the performance, and usually you can have the students self-assess their performance or peer assess their performance. How do you do that? Well, for the feedback, you can simply, teacher to whole class interaction with Google Meet or Zoom, presenting you or sharing your screen. Provide language-focused practice. You can use any website that has already exercises on the items where students have more mistakes, or the item that was linguistically or communicatively more important for that task. So again, you can use any website with exercises, or you can create your own, language-focused practice with Google Forms, with Kahoot, with quizzes, etc. And for peer assessment, you can use simply Google Form. You can have students fill out a form, scoring their performance, scoring their peers, their classmates, or leaving a comment about how they felt performing the task. Right, now we have the 5 E's framework. It was developed by Kathleen Tucker in 2020. And the 5 E's are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. So what do you do at the engaging part? You brainstorm ideas, you ask questions to generate expectations, and you access students' prior or previous knowledge. How do you do that? You can use Jamboard, you can use Padlet for the brainstorming, right? You can use Google Forms to ask the questions, or you can use Mentimeter. Explore. Have students research new information on the topic. Here you can have them perform a web quests. You can assign asynchronous tasks in which students have to research and then share and discuss information. And what tools do you need for that? Well, any tools that give students access to different data and where they can conduct research, okay? Of course, ERIC, it might be more for college students. They can use any, search engine on the internet. You can tell them to go to specific websites that have the information on what they are or what you want them to research. And then they can share or discuss that information in Google Classrooms, basically in a forum or uploading what they have found, Explain. This stage requires live synchronous video sessions, okay, very much like this. You can use online tutorials. Usually it involves teachers fronted instruction. So again, this is more teacher to whole class session, or you can have student front instruction. You can have, there's a terrible typo there, I'm sorry. Students explain what their research, explaining. Okay, so in the 5 E's, it's not that the instruction disappears, but it has a specific point. And before you know, lecture or teach, students have already gathered information. What do you use? Well, you can use YouTube, you can use this modality, teacher to whole class, student to whole class. You can have the tutorials in Flipgrid. Edpuzzle is also very good for these kind of explanation activities. Elaborate. In this stage, you have students make connections between new and old information, apply the knowledge to novel situations, propose solutions to problems. They generate their own examples, and they transform the information. Okay, so what they read from Chrome, what they watched in a tech talk, now they have to create their own tutorial video, their own graphic organizer, or you know, a Prezi presentation, summarizing, paraphrasing, and transforming that information. They can easily do that in Lucidchart, Flipgrid, or Padlet, just to mention a few of the options. And finally, you evaluate. Okay, so you provide opportunities for formative assessment, assessment that does not require, you know, score or points, but more informative and descriptive information about performance and learning. You can have students self-assess. Of course, you can use quizzes, traditional quizzes with close-ended and open-ended questions, or you can have students complete a learning journal in which they reflect on how the learning process happened, what they learned, how they reached to that learning, etc. For the quizzes, well, you can use quizzes or Google Forms. Edpuzzle also provides the opportunity to create a video and you insert questions within the video. And for a learning journal, students can use, you know, open-ended questions in Google Form, or they can create like their timeline or the infographic of their learning process in Canva. Okay, well, if we take a look at the 5 E's framework, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. So remember, in the 3 P's or the PPP, so first you teach, students practice, and students create. In the task base, you do some teaching at the beginning, especially vocabulary or activation of previous knowledge. Students create during the task, and in the post-task, you actually teach, right? Here, the teaching will happen at the explain stage, but in all the other stages, students will be involved and will be active, okay? And the other thing is that for this model to work, you need some kind of content, topic, an issue. Students will engage, explore, elaborate on something like the environment or racial discrimination or, you know, political issues of the country or teen pregnancy, okay? So the information, the content has to be some theme that is relevant for the students. I mean, you're gonna do these 5 stages with the present perfect. Okay, today we are going to investigate about the present perfect. No, you have to investigate about more informational and realistic topics. Well, because of time, I wanted to show you a model. What I'm going to do is that I will share that link in the chat. Just give me a second. Sorry. And you can, it's a unit created in created with Google Sites, and I try to apply most of those principles in designing that lesson. So I really would like if you just go there, take a look, visit the different stages. Yes, because of time, we're not going to be able to look at it. I'm sorry. I really need to improve my time management. Well, I'm going back to the presentation then. In closing, I want to make 6 main points to close this presentation. So number 1, regardless of the medium of delivery or the modality of teaching, curriculum development involves understanding student needs and environmental conditions. Okay, that's going to be key. Whether you're teaching in a rural school, face-to-face, whether you're teaching in Moodle with the highest technology, or if you're just using WhatsApp with your student, you need to consider more than that, those tools, their students' needs, and what are the conditions under which the teaching is going to happen. The second, learning goals determine the selection of content and activities. In turn, we select the technology considering their interactional potential, okay? We don't choose a technology and then think of the activities and goals. We don't think of the contents and then the goals. No, first we have clear goals, then we select contents, then we consider what interactions allow us to reach that goal, and then we choose the technology. That should be the way. Then again, there are different types of interactions. None is good or bad, but you have to select considering what is the goal and what you want the students to learn. The third one, online teaching, remote or virtual education can be very behaviorist and teacher-centered. Although this is an option, we want our curriculum to be more constructivist and student-centered. But there's nothing wrong with having a couple of activities that are behaviorist or are teacher-centered or teacher-fronted, but please do not let that be 100% of your class time. 4, different lesson models have an introductory or preparation stage. In that stage, use games, icebreakers, starters, brainstorming. Okay. One of the sessions in the building teaching is going to be specifically about that, how to engage student in the introductory phase of the lesson. Number 5, combine different types of interactions. Make sure that teacher to whole class is the least frequent interaction and maximize student to student interaction or group work. And 6, every lesson should be evaluated. This does not mean having a test at the end. Evaluation may involve more formative and qualitative forms of reflection on learning processes. And well, that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you. As I told you this, in the upcoming sessions, for example, there's one that's going to be about, managing your emotional intelligence as a teacher.
Okay, it's good. Thank you very much.
Okay. There's going to be another for warm-ups, another for practice, another for different types of interaction. But well, so thank you for your attendance. And well, we have a few minutes. I don't know if you have any questions and comments that we can share. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, Alejandra, for your nice comments. Well,
Qué pena te interrumpo, señor Carlos.
Yes, sure, Santiago.
Por
Adelante.
favor, no olviden diligenciar la asistencia. Veo que hay 56, habían 57 conectados, así que faltan alrededor de 8 o 9 personas para que las llenen, ya que esto es crucial para generar los certificados. No olviden que se requiere una asistencia mínima al 60% de los laboratorios para poder obtenerlos.
Sí, muy importante, por favor. Ahí se ha compartido varias veces el link Por favor, no olviden llenarlo. Thank you, Gladys. Thank you, everyone. Yes, this was very interesting. But
I didn't see.
I know
Thank you,
this,
Mr.
it was too much information. I'm sorry. But I'm going to stop